Welcome to Storyflix Film, where movies are not just watched in a broken bar, they are experienced. Here, we bring you fast, powerful, and engaging movie recaps, turning full films into short, exciting stories without missing the thrill. From action-packed blockbusters to emotional dramas and mind-blowing sci-fi, we break it all down in a way that keeps you hooked till the end. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because every story here is a cinematic journey in minutes. Predator: Badlands is a 2025 Americana science fiction action film directed by Adam Trachtenberg and written by Patrick Hunt from a story by Trachtenberg and Dunn. It is the 7th installment in the Predator franchise and stars Elle Fanning and Demetrius Shostakovich in leading roles. The story follows Deck, a young exiled Yaja, who crash lands on a hostile planet and must prove himself worthy of the hunt by killing an apex predator, leading him to form an alliance with the Wayland Yutani Corporation android. Following the success of Fabria 2022, Trachtenberg returned to direct 2 additional films in the franchise. Badlands was announced to be releasing in 2025 after another Predator film, which would later turn out to be Predator: Killer of Killersa, 2025. Predator: Badlands premiered at the TCL Chinese Theatre on November 3, 2025, and was released in the United States on November 7, by 20th Century Studios. The film received generally positive reviews from critics and grossed over $184 million worldwide. Plot: Deck is a Yaja runner from the Yaja home planet of Yaja Prime. Seeking approval from his father, clan leader Nja, Deck plans to hunt the Kalisk, an apex predator on the death planet Jenna, fear even buying Nja. Before Deck can leave, Nja arrives and orders Deck's brother Gwai to kill him, deeming him too weak for the clan. Defying the order, Gwai activates his ship to transport Deck to Jinnah, fighting Nja only to be defeated and lose an arm. Deck watches helplessly as Nja executes Gwai. Upon crash landing, Deck faces numerous dangers from Genasifera and Fauna. Losing almost all of his gear, he reluctantly allies with Thea, a damaged Wayland Yutani Corporation android, whose team was destroyed by the Kalisk. Thea offers to help Deck track the Kalisk. Later, they are joined by a friendly creature that Thea names Bud, which marks Deck with her saliva while they are camping out of gratitude to Deck for saving her from a wild beast and feeding her. Deck later reveals to Thea that his father killed Gwai, prompting Thea to teach him about the Wolvesen on Earth, and that the Alpha Wolf protects the pack. But Deck misunderstands her words and believes he will be the Alpha who kills the most. Meanwhile, Thea's sister, Tessa, is retrieved by Wayland Yutani androids and repaired at their main base, where she is threatened with decommissioning if she fails her mission, and is told of Deck's presence on Jinnah and that Thea is with him. Joined by a Wayland Yutani team, Tessa begins searching for Deck's group, stumbling across his crashed ship and finding his lost equipment, including cryogenic explosives. After discovering the remains of her team, Thea attempts to repair herself, revealing the Wayland Yutani team is on the way, as they aim to capture the Kalisk, and urges Deck to flee, saying he cannot kill the Kalisk. Feeling betrayed, Deck challenges the Kalisk alone with only his sword. The two fight, and though Deck manages to sever its head and tail, the Kalisk regenerates itself and subdues him. Unexpectedly, it spares him after smelling him, but the Wayland Yutani team arrives and Tessa captures them both after freezing them with the cryogenic explosives. Tessa congratulates Thea on her successful mission because the Kalisk's regenerative powers could be a miracle for humanity, then begins experimenting on Deck. But Thea intervenes and convinces her that Deck is not ideal. Seeing Thea's emotions as weakness, Tessa slates her for deactivation and orders her boxed up. Regretting selling Deck and the Kalisk out to the company, Thea helps Deck escape, and Deck comes across Gwai's crashed ship after healing his wounds and venting out his anger at the death of his brother, He realizes the truth of Thai's words, that an alpha wolf does not kill the most prey, but rather protects its pack members, and uses Jenna's natural environment to create improvised weapons, such as explosives and blades, to rescue Thaya. While doing so, he reunites with Bud and realizes she is the child of the Kalisk, who had smelled her saliva on him, and decides to rescue the Kalisk as well. Dek and Bud infiltrate the Wayland Udemy base, kill most of the guards and free Thaya, who reunites with her severed legs as Dek reveals to her that Bud is the Kalisk's child. While Thaya and Bud search for the Kalisk, Dek kills the remaining guards before being confronted by Tessa, who pilots a power loader mecha and wields Gwai's plasma caster. The Kalisk, freed by Thaya, joins the fight and eventually swallows Tessa alive. After Dek and Bud each share a moment with the Kalisk, Tessa kills the creature with a combination of cryogenic grenades and plasma caster blasts from inside its body, and prepares to kill Thaya for her betrayal. As Thaya severs ties with her sister, Dek stabs Tessa to death and reclaims his brother's plasma caster, while Bud tears off Tessa's head and spine. Sometime later, Dek returns to Yaja Prime. He presents Tessa's skull to his father as a trophy and demands his own cloaking device as a reward, but Njaha denies the request and orders his bodyguards to kill Dek. Quickly dispatching the bodyguards, Dek challenges and defeats his father in a duel, cutting off his arm and restraining him with his own trap. Njaha attempts to barter for his life by offering Dek a place in the clan, claiming he was wrong about him. Dek rejects the offer, having found his own clan with Thaya and Bud. An older and larger Bud bites Njaha's head off, and Dek takes the cloaking device for himself, which a fully repaired Thaya congratulates him for. Njaha's remaining clan members suddenly pull out their weapons just as a large Yaja ship appears from the horizon. As Thaya wonders if the ship is friendly, Dek grabs his sword and reveals that it is his mother. Dek is a Yaja Runta from the Yaja home planet of Yaja Prime. Seeking approval from his father, clan leader Njaha, Dek plans to hunt the Kalisk, Anna Apex Predatora on the death planet Jenna, Thera Devan by Njaha. Before Dek can leave, Njaha arrives and orders Dek's brother Gwai to kill him, deeming him too weak for the clan. Defying the order, Gwai activates his ship to transport Dek to Jenna, fighting Njaha only to be defeated and lose an arm. Dek watches helplessly as Njaha executes Gwai. Upon crash landing, Dek faces numerous dangers from Genasifera and Afana, losing almost all of his gear. He reluctantly allies with Thaya, a damaged Wayland Utania Corporation android, whose team was destroyed by the Kalisk. Thaya offers to help Dek track the Kalisk. Later, they are joined by a friendly creature that Thaya names Bud, which marks Dek with her saliva while they are camping out of gratitude to Dek for saving her from a wild beast and feeding her. Dek later reveals to Thaya that his father killed Gwai, prompting Thaya to teach him about the wolf lesson on Earth, and that the alpha wolf protects the pack. But Dek misunderstands her words and believes he will be the alpha who kills the most. Meanwhile, Thaya's sister, Tessa, is retrieved by Wayland Udemy androids and repaired at their main base, where she is threatened with decommissioning if she fails her mission, and is told of Dek's presence on Jenna and that Thaya is with him. Joined by a Wayland Udemy team, Tessa begins searching for Dek's group, stumbling across his crashed ship and finding his lost equipment including cryogenic explosives. After discovering the remains of her team, Thaya attempts to repair herself, revealing the Wayland Udemy team is on the way, as they aim to capture the Kalisk, and urges Dek to flee, saying he cannot kill the Kalisk. Feeling betrayed, Dek challenges the Kalisk alone with only his sword. The two fight, and though Dek manages to sever its head and tail, the Kalisk regenerates itself and subdues him. Unexpectedly, it spares him after smelling him, but the Wayland Udemy team arrives and Tessa captures them both after freezing them with the cryogenic explosives. Tessa congratulates Thine on her successful mission because the Kalisk's regenerative powers could be a miracle for humanity, then begins experimenting on Dek, but Thea intervenes and convinces her that Deck is not ideal. Seeing Thea's emotions as weakness, Tessa slates her for deactivation and orders her boxed up. Regretting selling Deck and the Callisk to the company, Thea helps Deck escape, and Deck comes across Guy's crashed ship after healing his wounds and venting out his anger at the death of his brother. He realizes the truth of Thea's words, that an alpha wolf does not kill the most prey, but rather protects its pack members, and uses Jenna's natural environment to create improvised weapons, such as explosives and blades, to rescue Thea. While doing so, he reunites with Bud and realizes she is the child of the Callisk, who had smelled her saliva on him, and decides to rescue the Callisk as well. Deck and Bud infiltrate the Wayland Udemy base, kill most of the guards and free Thea, who reunites with her severed legs as Deck reveals to her that Bud is the Callisk's child. While Thea and Bud search for the Callisk, Deck kills the remaining guards before being confronted by Tessa, who pilots a power loader mecha and wields Guy's plasmacaster. The Callisk, freed by Thea, joins the fight and eventually swallows Tessa alive. After Deck and Bud each share a moment with the Callisk, Tessa kills the creature with a combination of cryogenic grenades and plasmacaster blasts from inside its body, and prepares to kill Thea for her betrayal. As Thea severs ties with her sister, Deck stabs Tessa to death and reclaims his brother's plasmacaster, while Bud tears off Tessa's head and spine. Sometime later, Deck returns to Yaja Prime. He presents Tessa's skull to his father as a trophy and demands his own cloaking device as a reward, but Njaha denies the request and orders his bodyguards to kill Deck. Quickly dispatching the bodyguards, Deck challenges and defeats his father in a duel, cutting off his arm and restraining him with his own trap. Njaha attempts to barter for his life by offering Deck a place in the clan, claiming he was wrong about him. Deck rejects the offer, having found his own clan with Thea and Bud. An older and larger Bud bites Njaha's head off, and Deck takes the cloaking device for himself, which a fully repaired Thea congratulates him for. Njaha's remaining clan members suddenly pull out their weapons just as a large Yaja ship appears from the horizon. As Thea wonders if the ship is friendly, Deck grabs his sword and reveals that it is his mother. Cached further information: a list of Predator franchise characters: Elfania as A. Broken Bar Thea, a damaged whale and Uni Corporation, a Synthetica who partners with Deck 5. A. Broken Bar Tessa, a whale and Uni Synthetic and Thea's sister who opposes her in Deck 6-5. A. Since Demetrius Shustrakol Oamatanja as Deck, a young Yaja outcast for being a Runt 7. A. Since Ruben Dajanga as Njaha, Deck and Guy's father and leader of their clan, who believes Deck should be called a because he is a runt. A. Broken Bar Demetrius Shustrakol Oamatanji as the voice of Njaha. A. Since Mike Hamaka as Guy, Deck's protective older brother, who helps him prepare for his first hunt. A. Broken Bar Stefan Grub as the voice of Guy. A. Since Rohanul Narayan as Bud, a creature of the planet Jinnah. A. Since Cameron Brown as Smythe and other male Wayland Udini drone synthetics. I. Since Alison Wrighta as the voice of FAMU/TH/er, Thea A.I.A. Overseer of Wayland Udini and Tessa's superior the Duffer brothers provided the voice of the onboard computer for Guy's ship. Trachtenberg was originally set to direct the third episode of Fast Stranger Things 5, but was unable to win a Badlands go to greenlit for production. 8-9. Production. In February 2024, it was revealed that a standalone film in the Predator franchise titled Badlands was in development, set to be directed by Adan Trachtenberg, who previously directed and co-wrote the story of Fapria, 2022, and A Predator, Killer of Killersa, 2025, and co-written by Patrick Hahn, who wrote Tag Prey. 10E writer Sir Brian Duffield, A. Brian Fuller, A. Patrick Somerville, and Ben Schwartz are credited for additional literary material, not on screen. 11. The director cited stylistic and thematic influences from the works of A. Frank Frazetta and A. Terrence Malick, A. Conan the Barbarian, A. Drax the Destroyer, the films Oceania, 1953, A. Mad Max 2A, 1981, At the Book of Eli, 2010, as well as Clint Eastwood westerns, and the video game A Shadow of the Colossus, 2005. 7. In June, A.L. Fanning was in talks to join the film in a dual role, 12. With her casting confirmed in August. 13. Drawing influence from the franchise's expanded universe, A. Badlands is intended to be a self-contained entry in the series, set on the Predator's home world and focusing on the culture of their species. 14. 15. A. To the Scent, a consistent written and verbal language for the Predators was developed for the film by linguist Britton Watkins. In creating the Predator language, Watkins drew influence from previous depictions of the Predator's language, but redesigned the language to have consistent rules of grammar. The Predator's numerical system was influenced by the self-destruct time arena of the original 1987 A Predator film. The written language from symbols seen in Aliens vs. Predator, Requiem, 2007, and their spoken language from a brief depiction in The Predator, 2018. A consideration was also made for the type of sound a predator's mouth design could realistically make, as well as the predator's typical clicking noises. The film adds the terms Yaja and Yaja Prime to the Predator film series to refer to the predator species and their home world, respectively. These terms were introduced in the franchise's expanded universe, first appearing in the 1994 novella Aliens vs. Predator, authored by S.D. Perry and Steve Berry, which itself was a spin-off of the Aliens vs. Predator, a comic book series published by Dark Horse Comics. In a departure from previous films, the Predator, Dek, is the protagonist rather than an antagonist. Dek is portrayed by stuntman Demetrius Shostakovich, who also learned the Predator language specifically for the role to create Dek's physical appearance. A Studio Ghillie designed a creature suited to portray Dek's body, while Dek's face was digitally enhanced using a motion capture computer animation to convey more subtle emotional expression. AYTA Diaresis Workshop also contributed to the film's practical effects and designs. The fictional Wayland Uni Corporation featured in the Alien franchise, and created by screenwriter Sedano Banona and Ronald Shusetta for the 1979 film Alien, appears in the film. Principal photography began in New Zealand by August 27, 2024, under the working title Backpack, and a Rapida in late October. Jeff Cutter served as the cinematographer, after previously working with Trachtenberg and Opry. Olivier Dumont and Kathy Siegel served as the film's production visual effects supervisor and visual effects producer, respectively, creating the film's computer-generated imagery through visual effects vendors Industrial Light Magica, ILM, AYTA Diaresis FX, A Rising Sun Pictures, A Trickster, Important Looking Pirates, The Yard VFX, and a Frame Store. According to Trachtenberg, every shot of the film required visual effects work. Music main article A Predator, Badlands, soundtrack. In October 2025, A Sarah Schachner and a Benjamin Wolfiska were revealed to have composed the musical score, having previously worked with Trachtenberg and Opry and a Predator, Killer of Killers, respectively. Released theatrical in June 2025, Disney announced that A Predator, Badlands would receive a Hall H presentation at a San Diego Comic-Con later that year. The film held its UK premiere at the BFI Moxa in London on October 28, 2025. It subsequently had its world premiere at the TCL Chinese Theatre on November 3, 2025, before being theatrically released in the United States on November 7, 2025. In a Reld 3D and a IMAX excluding a Alien vs. Predator, 2004, A Predator, Badlands is the first film in the main linear Predator series to receive a PG-13 rating from the Motion Picture Association. All prior installments in the series were rated R. 31. Home media. Predator, Badlands was released on digital platforms on January 6, 2026, and was released in a DVD, a Blu-ray, and a Ultra HD Blu-ray on February 17, 2026. In the United States, A Predator, Badlands topped Fandango at Home's weekly digital sales and rental chart for the week ending January 11. Following its premium digital release on January 6, the film remained in first place for the weeks ending January 18 and January 25. It subsequently remained within the top 10 from the week ending February 1 through March 1 on physical media. The film debuted at number 1 in Circana's Video Scan chart, which tracks combined sales of all disc formats, as well as on the dedicated Blu-ray sales chart. For the week ending February 21, it was also the top-selling title on the 4K Ultra HD disc format during the same week. For February 2026, the film placed number 1 on the monthly physical media sales chart and number 2 on the year-to-date chart through February. Streaming analytics firm FlixPatrol, which monitors daily updated VOD charts and streaming ratings across the globe, reported that A Predator, Badlands ranked number 1 on the US Apple TV chart for the week ending January 11. As of January 13, the film placed first on multiple on-demand platforms, including Amazon, Apple TV, and Vudu, and also held the top position in several international markets, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. On Hulu, the film recorded 9 million views during its first 5 days of streaming, becoming the platform's most watched film premiere since April 2022. A Nielsen Media Research, which records streaming viewership on certain U.S. television screens, announced that A Predator, Badlands accumulated 587 million minutes of viewing time between February 9 and 15. Ranking as the third most streamed film during that period. The following week, between February 16 and 22, the film recorded 343 million minutes of viewing time, again placing third. Day between February 23 and March 1, A Predator, Badlands garnered 165 million minutes of viewing time, ranking 9th. Reception. Box office. As of January 23, 2026, A Predator, Badlands has grossed $91.1 million in the United States and Canada, and $93.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $184.6 million. In the United States and Canada, A Predator, Badlands was released alongside Die My Love, A Nuremberg, A Christia and A Sarah's Oil, and was initially projected to gross $25–30 million in its opening weekend. The film made $15.6 million on its first day, including $4.8 million from Wednesday and Thursday box office previews, rising estimates to $36–38 million. A record for the Predator franchise. It would end up debuting to $40 million at the domestic box office in its opening weekend, overtaking the previous franchise record held by Alien vs. Predator, which made $38 million in 2004. The film collected an additional $40 million from international markets, for a worldwide total debut of $80 million. By combining intense action with emotional depth, the movie manages to feel both exciting and meaningful at the same. Sometime later, Deck returns to Yacht Prime. He presents Tess's skull to his father as a trophy and demands his own cloaking device as a reward, but Njaha denies the request and orders his bodyguards to kill Deck. Quickly dispatching the bodyguards, Deck challenges and defeats his father in a duel, cutting off his arm and restraining him with his own trap. Njah attempts to barter for his life by offering Dek a place in the clan, claiming he was wrong about him. Dek rejects the offer, having found his own clan with Thea and Bud. An older and larger Bud bites Njah's head off, and Dek takes the cloaking device for himself, which a fully repaired Thea congratulates him for. Njah's remaining clan members suddenly pull out their weapons just as a large Yaja ship appears from the horizon. As Thea wonders if the ship is friendly, Dek grabs his sword and reveals that it is his mother. Cached further information: a list of Predator franchise characters: Elfania as A. Broken Bar Thea, a damaged Wayland Utiny Corporation Synthetica who partners with Dek 5. A. Broken Bar Tessa, a Wayland Utiny synthetic and Thea's sister who opposes her in Dek 6-5. A. Since Demetrius Shustrakol Oamatanja as Dek, a young Yaja outcast for being a Runt 7. A. Since Ruben Dejanga as Njah, Dek and Kwai's father and leader of their clan, who believes Dek should be called because he is a Runt. A. Broken Bar Demetrius Shustrakol Oamatanji as the voice of Njah. A. Since Mike Hamaka as Kwai, Dek's protective older brother, who helps him prepare for his first hunt. A. Broken Bar Stefan Grub as the voice of Kwai. A. Since Rohanul Narayan as Bud, a creature of the planet Jinnah. A. Since Cameron Brown as Smythe and other male Wayland Utiny drone synthetics. I. Since Alison Wright as the voice of FAMU/TH/er, Thea A.I.A. Overseer of Wayland Utiny and Tessa's superior the Duffer brothers provided the voice of the onboard computer for Kwai's ship. Trachtenberg was originally set to direct the third episode of Fast Stranger Things 5, but was unable to win a Badlands go to greenlit for production. 8-9. Production. In February 2024, it was revealed that a standalone film in the Predator franchise titled Badlands was in development, set to be directed by Adan Trachtenberg, who previously directed and co-wrote the story of Fapria, 2022, and A Predator, Killer of Kilursa, 2025, and co-written by Patrick Hahn, who wrote Tag Prey. 10E writers Sir Brian Duffield, A. Brian Fuller, A. Patrick Somerville, and Ben Schwartz are credited for additional literary material, not on screen. 11 The director cited stylistic and thematic influences from the works of A. Frank Frazetta and A. Terrence Malick, A. Conan the Barbarian, A. Drax the Destroyer, the film Sashania, 1953, A. Mad Max 2A, 1981, A. The Book of Eli, 2010, as well as Clint Eastwood westerns, and the video game A Shadow of the Colossus, 2005. 7A in June, A.L. Fanning was in talks to join the film in a dual role, 12A with her casting confirmed in August. 13. Drawing influence from the franchise's expanded universe, A Badlands is intended to be a self-contained entry in the series, set on the Predator's homeworld and focusing on the culture of their species. 14-15 A to the Scent, a consistent written and verbal language for the Predators was developed for the film by linguist Britton Watkins. A. In creating the Predator language, Watkins drew influence from previous depictions of the Predator's language, but redesigned the language to have consistent rules of grammar. The Predator's numerical system was influenced by the self-destruct time arena the original 1987 A Predator film, the written language from symbols seen in Aliens vs. Predator, Rikuma, 2007, and their spoken language from a brief depiction in the Predator, 2018. A consideration was also made for the type of sound a Predator's mouth design could realistically make, as well as the Predator's typical clicking noises. The film adds the terms Yaja and Yaja Prime to the Predator film series to refer to the Predator species and their home world, respectively. These terms were introduced in the franchise's expanded universe, first appearing in the 1994 novella Aliens vs. Predator, authored by S.D. Perry and Steve Berry, which itself was a spin-off of the Aliens vs. Predator, a comic book series published by Dark Horse Comics. In a departure from previous films, the Predator, Dek, is the protagonist rather than an antagonist. Dek is portrayed by stuntman Demetrius Shustrakol Oamatanji, who also learned the Predator language specifically for the role to create Dek's physical appearance, A Studio Ghilesa designed a creature suited to portray Deck's body, while Deck's face was digitally enhanced using a motion capture via computer animation to convey more subtle emotional expression. AYTA Diaresis Workshop also contributed to the film's practical effects and designs. The fictional Wayland Utani Corporation featured in the Alien franchise, and created by screenwriter Sedano Banona and Ronald Shusetta for the 1979 film Alien, appears in the film. Principal photography began in New Zealand by August 27, 2024, under the working title Backpack, and Rapida in late October. Jeff Cutter served as the cinematographer, after previously working with Trachtenberg and Opry. Olivier Dumont and Kathy Siegel served as the film's production visual effects supervisor and visual effects producer, respectively, creating the film's computer-generated imagery through visual effects vendors Industrial Light Magica, ILM, AYTA Diaresis FX, A Rising Sun Pictures, A Trickster, Important Looking Pirates, The Yard VFX, and A Frame Store. According to Trachtenberg, every shot of the film required visual effects work. Music main article A Predator, Badlands, soundtrack. In October 2025, A Sarah Schachner and a Benjamin Wolfiska were revealed to have composed the musical score, having previously worked with Trachtenberg and Opry and A Predator, Killer of Killers, respectively. Released theatrical in June 2025, Disney announced that A Predator, Badlands would receive a Hall H presentation at a San Diego Comic-Con later that year. The film held its UK premiere at the BFI Moxa in London on October 28, 2025. It subsequently had its world premiere at the TCL Chinese Theatre on November 3, 2025, before being theatrically released in the United States on November 7, 2025. In a Reld 3D and IMAX excluding Alien vs. Predator, 2004, A Predator, Badlands is the first film in the main linear Predator series to receive a PG-13 rating from the Motion Picture Association. All prior installments in the series were rated R. 31. Home media. Predator, Badlands was released on digital platforms on January 6, 2026. And was released in a DVD, a Blu-ray, and a Ultra HD Blu-ray on February 17, 2026. In the United States, A Predator, Badlands topped Fandango at Home's weekly digital sales and rental chart for the week ending January 11, following its premium digital release on January 6. The film remained in first place for the weeks ending January 18 and January 25. It subsequently remained within the top 10 from the week ending February 1 through March 1 on physical media. The film debuted at number 1 in Circana's Video Scan chart, which tracks combined sales of all disc formats, as well as on the dedicated Blu-ray sales chart. For the week ending February 21, it was also the top-selling title on the 4K Ultra HD disc format during the same week. For February 2026, the film placed number 1 on the monthly physical media sales chart and number 2 on the year-to-date chart through February. Streaming analytics firm FlixPatrol, which monitors daily updated VOD charts and streaming ratings across the globe, reported that A Predator, Badlands ranked number 1 on the US Apple TV chart for the week ending January 11. As of January 13, the film placed first on multiple on-demand platforms, including Amazon, Apple TV, and Vudu, and also held the top position in several international markets, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. On Hulu, the film recorded 9 million views during its first 5 days of streaming, becoming the platform's most watched film premiere since April 2022. A Nielsen Media Research, which records streaming viewership on certain U.S. television screens, announced that A Predator, Badlands accumulated 587 million minutes of viewing time between February 9 and 15, ranking as the third most streamed film during that period. The following week, between February 16 and 22, the film recorded 343 million minutes of viewing time, again placing third. Between February 23 and March 1, A Predator, Badlands garnered 165 million minutes of viewing time, ranking ninth. Reception. Box office. As of January 23, 2026, A Predator, Badlands has grossed $91.1 million in the United States and Canada, and $93.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $184.6 million. In the United States and Canada, A Predator, Badlands was released alongside Die My Love, A Nuremberg, A Christ and A Sarah's Oil, and was initially projected to gross $25–30 million in its opening weekend. The film made $15.6 million on its first day, including $4.8 million from Wednesday and Thursday box office previews, rising estimates to $36–38 million, a record for the Predator franchise. It would end up debuting to $40 million at the domestic box office in its opening weekend, overtaking the previous franchise record held by Alien vs. Predator, which made $38 million in 2004. The film collected an additional $40 million from international markets, for a worldwide total debut of $80 million. By combining intense action with emotional depth, the movie manages to feel both exciting and meaningful at the same time. Mother notices his concern and sees Ida as a weakness. She believes that this flaw is the reason their mission failed, since they were supposed to capture the Calic using its power. She also senses Dee's presence and begins to see him as a target. She assigns Tessa to continue the mission and take control. When Dee brings the token, instead of accepting it, she attacks him for the sake of completing her objective and secretly sends her location to Tessa. Tessa then captures the Calic and takes it along. Leia believes that Tessa has returned Ida for her, but a message makes it clear that she is only completing her mission. Leia is considered property of Wyke, and retrieving her is just part of the task. Tessa then takes Dee to the deck to study him while they are on the move. Dee does not understand why she is treating him differently. She explains that she was only being careful because she had already made a mistake during the initial capture of the Calic. She refuses to develop emotions because she believes feelings lead to errors and it could result in her being deactivated. Instead, she chooses to eliminate a weakness and even attempts to deactivate Leia, seeing her as a liability. However, Tessa is not completely free from emotions. Because of this internal conflict, her personality becomes manipulative. She lies to Mother about the escape, so she does not take responsibility. Later, after killing the creature, she mocks Leia for calling her sister and shows no remorse. She makes it clear that they were never sisters before Dee ends her. Dee feels betrayed and confused. Tessa uses him again to help with the mission, and he even blames her when she turns against him, although she later helps him escape. When Dee returns to his ship, he remembers Kay and realizes that he had faced a true alpha. Kay was strong, not just because of fat power, but because he protected Sumiania weaker like Dee. This makes Dee understand what it truly means to be strong. He decides to honor Kay by becoming an alpha himself, which means growing beyond his limitations. Much of the Predator franchise has always focused on predators coming to Earth to hunt humans. However, nearly 40 years after the original film, Predator, Badlands changes that idea by making a Predator the main character who must prove himself on a dangerous alien world. This time, the story follows him as he struggles to survive in an unfamiliar environment while trying to hunt the ultimate prey. The film is directed by Dana Trachtenberg, who previously worked in Operate 2022 and the animated Killer of Killers. Each of these projects explores a different side of the Predator universe. Prey focused on a historical setting, while Killer of Killers explored multiple Predator encounters. Badlands, however, takes a completely different approach by presenting a large-scale sci-fi story without relying heavily on human characters. The story also connects back to T's past. His father wanted him to remove all weakness, but Dee believed he deserved a chance to prove himself. He chooses to go after the dangerous Calic on the planet Ghana. Kay tries to protect Dee from their father and sends him to Ghana, sacrificing himself in the process. When Dee arrives on Ghana, he quickly realizes that nothing is as simple as Ida seemed. The planet is far more dangerous and unpredictable than he expected. However, he eventually receives help from a synthetic android connected to the Vent Corporation, an alien named Achia. She is familiar with this world because Event is also interested in capturing Thea Kalik. Because of this, she becomes his temporary companion, guiding him and giving useful advice on how to survive. D also gains another unexpected companion in the form of a bird-like primate creature. This creature shows loyalty toward him, even helping during fights by attacking enemies after they defeat dangerous monsters together. Despite this, D decides to leave the creature behind, believing that he must complete his hunt alone and not dependent on anyone. Meanwhile, as he reaches the area where Event's corporate forces are heading, Thea's situation becomes more intense. They are also after the Kalik, which possesses powerful abilities. D confronts the creature directly and manages to gain the upper hand during the fight. However, the Kalik does not kill him when it has the chance. Instead, something unexpected happens. The creature reacts differently, and begins to realize that it may not be what he originally thought. He understands that the Kalik is actually a child of a larger species. This realization changes his perspective. D begins to understand that being different is not necessarily a weakness. Instead, he can use his unique abilities to his advantage and even work as part of a group when needed. As he continues his journey across the dangerous planet Ghana, he faces multiple threats, including hostile environments and deadly creatures. Along the way, he regains strength and prepares himself for what comes next. Eventually, he teams up again to face the Van forces, leading to a final confrontation with Tessa. During the battle, she releases the captured Kalik, but also activates a powerful Yaja-based weapon inside the creature, causing it to explode and seemingly destroying it completely. She names this weapon Adria, showing no hesitation in using it. However, D manages to defeat her by attacking from behind, finally ending the conflict. After this, D returns to Yajapremia and confronts his father. In a decisive moment, he proves his strength by overpowering him. This act earns him recognition, and he is finally accepted as part of the clan. However, D realizes that he does not need to follow the same path as others or rely on traditional expectations. Shortly after, his father is killed by a much weaker creature that resembles the Kalik, reinforcing the idea that strength is not always what it seems. Just as D begins to process everything, a new ship appears. He is informed that his mother Hasa arrived. While there is little detail about her, the presence of her vessel suggests that this may lead to another major or a challenge. The lore surrounding the Yaja species can become complex, especially when exploring the expanded universe. In some interpretations, the Yaja have a structured society where female leaders, known as Yaja queens or matriarchs, hold significant power. This suggests that his mother could play an important role moving forward, possibly as a leader within the clan. In Badlands, while the clan leader goes out on hunts across different planets, the responsibilities of Yaja Prime are often handled at home. Because of this, Dex's mother could have a stronger understanding of what is happening on Yaja Prime. This might include internal conflicts, battles for dominance, or even the training of elite predator warriors like the Killer of Killers. It is possible that his mother wants Dex to take on a more active role in Thessi matters, although he may not be interested in getting involved. After everything he has gone through, he now has his own identity and may even consider separating himself from traditional Yaja practices, including their habit of abducting humans and other species for sport. This direction could have major implications for the future of the franchise. The presence of the Vent Corporation and its technology introduces elements that feel different from the usual Predator storyline. It also raises questions about connections between different sci-fi worlds. There has long been discussion among fans about whether the Alien and Predator universes exist in the Samia timeline. While earlier crossover attempts confirmed this idea, many fans chose to ignore those connections. However, with new elements being introduced, the possibility of another crossover could return. Even so, it may make more sense for the story to remain focused in Predator-centered narratives, especially now that Dex has become a key character. There is already potential to expand his story without relying on external crossovers. Behind the scenes, It has also been revealed that the creators already have ideas for where the story could go next. This suggests that the franchise still has a clear direction moving forward. Another interesting aspect of Predator: A Badlands is how it changes the usual perspective of the predator species. Instead of being the dominant hunters, they are sometimes shown facing challenges that place them lower in the food chain. The story follows Dex, a young predator rejected by his tribe and nearly killed by his own father. To prove his worth, he travels to the dangerous planet Ghana in search of a worthy trophy. His chosen target is the Calic, a creature considered nearly impossible to defeat even by the Yautja. Throughout the film's runtime, Dexa encounters the Calic multiple times. The creature is shown to have unique abilities and incredible strength. As the story progresses, Dex begins to understand it better, especially during his journey alongside an native companion. This leads him to develop a level of respect for the creature and even consider freeing it from captivity. From a production standpoint, the creature itself went through many designated changes. In an interview, members of the VFX and animation team explained that the Calic originally had even more abilities than what was shown on screen. However, due to time and pacing, not everything could be included in the final version. They also mentioned that the creature was designed to feel extremely powerful from the beginning. Its abilities were meant to challenge even the strongest predator, especially in action sequences where both sides face off directly. The design of the Calic also evolved during development. Early versions had no tendrils, while others featured softer, wave-like structures. Eventually, the final design settled in on a more bone-like appearance, giving it a unique and more intimidating look. The animation supervisor also explained that for certain key moments of the creature, they took inspiration from multiple sources. Some movements were inspired by reptiles, especially in scenes where Rita pushes down on the predator and forces it open. Other influences came from creatures seen in films like Jurassic Park and even a slight touch of King Kong. At the same time, they tried to add an emotional layer to the creature, so it would not feel like just another monster. They also pointed out that the film does not present the Calic as a purely terrifying or mindless creature. Instead, it is shown with a more complex nature, especially because of its connection with the smaller companion creature. This relationship adds depth and makes the audience see it differently. During the design process, which took a long time to finalize, the VFX team focused heavily on functionality. The idea was that every feature of the creature should serve a purpose. Concepts like regeneration and unique blood properties influenced how the creature was shaped and how it behaved. The team mentioned that form follows a function was a major principle during a development. At the same time, they had to balance this with the emotional side of the story, especially the connection between the creature and its companion. Because of this, certain designated elements, including color tones and textures, were carefully chosen. They avoided making the similarities too obvious, as they did not want the audience to immediately figure out the connection. Instead, they added subtle visual hints, such as similarities in skin patterns and structural features, which could be noticed later. All of these decisions contributed to the final design of the Calic in Badlands. The creature stands out as one of the most unique additions to the Predator franchise. Unlike previous enemies, it is not just a target, it is something far more powerful and mysterious. In fact, it is one of the first creatures shown on screen that can physically dominate a predator. While humans in earlier films managed to fight back after understanding their enemy, this creature presents a completely different level of challenge. Another important point is that, unlike most trophies in the franchise, this creature is not simply killed by the predator. Instead, the story takes a different direction, where the focus shifts toward understanding and even protecting it. By the end of the film, this idea becomes clearer. Initially, the goal was to hunt the creature, but the narrative evolves into something more complex. The creature is eventually defeated, but not in the traditional sense, as the events surrounding it change how it is perceived. From a design perspective, the Calic reflects many of the ideas discussed by the VFX team. Its movement, especially its four-legged stance, and its raw physical strength to give it a presence similar to powerful animals like lions or bears. Interestingly, The design also hints at a deeper connection with the smaller companion creature. Subtle details, such as shared features in the eyes and body structure, act as a clues, even though the two have different forms and styles. These elements together make the creature one of the most memorable aspects of Predator, Badlands, and highlight the effort put into making Ida feel both powerful and meaningful within the story. There are already hints about what could come next for the Predator franchise after Badlands. The director has mentioned that he'd got inspiration from Star Wars, especially the dynamic between characters like C-3PO and R2-D2. This influence can be seen in the relationship-driven elements of the story. At the same time, there are ideas being explored for future Predator films, including one possibly set during World War II, which would continue the trend of placing Predators in different time periods and settings. After a series of mixed reactions to previous sequels following the original 1987 Predator film, the franchise is once again moving forward with a fresh direction. The first trailer for Predator, Badlands gives a clear indication of this change, showing a new perspective with Predator as the main character in a futuristic setting. The story still follows a familiar structure, focusing on a young Predator who is tasked with hunting a powerful enemy. However, the trailer reveals that this time the narrative will feel different, with a stronger focus on character and world building. The footage shows a cold and hostile environment, along with scenes of a Predator preparing for a dangerous hunt. It also introduces the character played by Elle Fanning, who appears to have a much more important role than a typical human character in the franchise. A major reveal happens early in the trailer, where her character is shown to be an android connected to the Wayland Yutani Corporation. This connection is hinted at through a brief moment where her eyes flicker and display the familiar company logo. This detail directly links the film to the Alien franchise. Androids have been a key part of Alien films since the beginning, with several notable characters appearing throughout the series. The presence of a similar android in a Predator, Badlands suggests a deeper connection between the two universes. It is still unclear exactly where the story fits within the Alien timeline. Since the film is set in the distant future, it could take place after events seen in later Alien movies. Her design and technology suggest that she may be one of the most advanced androids shown so far. There are also visual clues supporting this connection. In one scene, she is seen wearing equipment marked with a Wayland Yutani logo, indicating that she is directly linked to the organization. The idea of bringing an android into a Predator-focused story may seem unexpected, but it is not entirely new. Both Alien and Predator belong to the same studio, and they have crossed over before in earlier films. However, those crossovers mainly focus on interactions between the species themselves. This time, the connection feels more integrated into the story, rather than just being a surface-level crossover. Additional details in the trailer, such as vehicles and equipment carrying the Wayland Yutani branding, suggest that this connection goes beyond just owning a character. It hints at a larger shared universe that may play a role in future stories. The inclusion of these elements opens up new possibilities for both franchises. With both Predator and Alien being successfully revived in recent years, this approach could lead to more interconnected storytelling moving forward. After Disney acquired 20th Century, there has been renewed interest in expanding these classic franchises. Disney and 20th Century Studios are actively working to grow the universe, with projects like Predator, Badlands and Predator, Killer of Killers releasing, along with new Alien films currently in development. Connecting the franchises through a Predator, Badlands is a smart move. Instead of forcing a direct crossover like the earlier Alien vs. Predator films, this approach slowly builds a connection in a more natural way. It allows both universes to exist together without overwhelming the story. The film introduces a unique concept by pairing an android with Yaja, creating a fresh dynamic that hasn't been explored before. If this direction succeeds, it opens the door for more crossovers in the future, but in a more balanced and story-driven way. At the same time, Hollywood films have started performing strongly again in international markets like China. Predator, Badlands managed to take the #1 spot at the box office there, earning around $1.8 million. Other films followed behind, including a PMS Pixels, which secured second place and pushed its total earnings higher. Several local films also contributed to the box office rankings. A documentary drama focused on a struggling coastal family showed steady performance, while other titles continued to add to their totals after multiple weeks in theaters. A romantic drama also entered the chart, featuring a story about two former lovers reconnecting after years apart. Another film centered around a younger woman obsessed with pandas added to the lineup, exploring themes of love, dreams, and personal growth. Overall, the weekend box office reached around $21.7 million, staying consistent with the previous week. However, the yearly total still shows a decline compared to last year. The success of streaming releases played a major role in giving Disney and 20th Century Studios the confidence to release Predator: Badlands in theaters. Earlier entries in the franchise had mixed results, but this film has managed to perform better than expected. With a production budget of around $100 million, the film has already crossed $150 million worldwide after 2 weeks in theaters, including about $76 million from domestic markets. It has also become the highest grossing Predator film domestically when not adjusted for inflation. Based on its current performance, analysts predict that the film could finish its theatrical run between $180 million and $200 million globally. While it may not fully recover its total costs from box office sales alone, it still shows strong potential when considering additional revenue from digital platforms. The story of Predator: Badlands follows a young predator named Dex, who has been exiled from his clan. In order to prove himself, he travels to one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy to hunt a creature that is considered nearly impossible to defeat. There, he finds an unexpected ally in a stranded and damaged robot named Tia. Badlands is directed and produced by Dana Trachtenberg. It is the first film in the Predator universe that focuses mainly on the Yautja species, and also the first to present a predator as both the main character and an underdog. At the same time, the film's box office performance has taken a negative turn. What was initially expected to be a moderate loss has now grown into a much larger financial setback. Early projections suggested losses around $60 million, but newer estimates indicate that the situation has worsened significantly as audience interest dropped. During its later weeks in theaters, the film saw a sharp decline in earnings with a major drop in revenue and a large reduction in theater availability. This clearly shows that exhibitors were pulling the film due to low demand. At this stage, the domestic box office run is effectively over. The numbers are not strong enough to cover the combined costs of production, marketing, and distribution, which area estimated to require around $262 million to break even. Disney had hoped that international markets would help balance the losses, but that support did not fully materialize. Global earnings showed only slight improvement over domestic numbers, and there was no major late surge from key markets. As a result, the film is now projected to lose a significant amount overall, placing it in a weak position financially. Because of this performance, if the studio decides to continue the Predator franchise, it may shift towards a smaller scale or streaming focused releases instead of large theatrical projects. This approach would reduce financial risk following the underperformance of Badlands. Looking at past films, earlier entries in the franchise performed much better when adjusted for inflation. Alien vs. Predator remains one of the highest grossing entries, while the original 1987 Predator film also outperformed Badlands when compared in today's value. Despite this, streaming success has played a key role in keeping the franchise alive. Positive response on digital platforms encouraged Disney and 20th Century Studios to release Badlands in theaters, even after mixed results from previous installments. The film, made on a budget of around $100 million, managed to cross $150 million worldwide after a few weeks in theaters. It also became one of the higher performing Predator films domestically in raw numbers. Industry analysts predict that the final global total could land between $188 million and $200 million. While this may not be enough to fully recover costs from theatrical release alone, additional revenue from streaming, digital sales, and a merchandise could help the film eventually reach profitability. The director also described the Cinderella creature as powerful and intimidating, but designed with subtle elements that influence how characters react to it. The main character, Dex, is portrayed as an anti-hero, someone flawed and rejected, yet still capable of growth and making the right choices. The story follows Dex, a young predator who has been exiled from his clan. In order to prove himself, he travels to a dangerous planet in the galaxy to hunt a nearly unstoppable creature known as the Calic. During this journey, he once again forms an unlikely partnership with a stranded robot, creating a unique dynamic that shapes the progression of the story. Badlands is directed and produced by Dana Trachtenberg. The success of streaming releases played a big role in giving Disney and 20th Century Studios the confidence to bring a Predator, Badlands to theaters, especially after mixed box office responses to earlier films. Projects like Prey, 2022, which returned to a more grounded style, and the well-received animated Killer of Killers helped rebuild interest in the franchise. Predator, Badlands has now earned a solid amount worldwide, adding around $7.20 million during its fourth weekend in theaters. This brings its total to approximately $85 million domestically and about $88 million internationally, with a total nearing $170 million. The film has become one of the highest grossing entries in the Predator franchise, even surpassing the 2018 film The Predator, which finished at around $160 million. It is important to note that these numbers are being compared without adjusting for inflation. Even so, the film's position within the franchise is significant. However, the more important question is whether it has performed well enough to justify a sequel. After 4 weeks in theaters, the film's earnings have started to decline following a strong opening. Based on its current pace, it is unlikely to cross the $200 million mark globally. When production costs, marketing expenses, and revenue sharing are taken into account, the possibility of a sequel remains uncertain and depends on additional factors. The Predator franchise originally began with the 1987 film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. In comparison, Badlands takes a very different approach. Instead of focusing on sci-fi horror, it leans more toward action and a character-driven storytelling. For the first time, the Predator itself becomes the main character. The story follows a Yaja named Dex, who is trying to prove himself to his father by hunting a powerful creature in a dangerous planet. During his journey, he encounters a scientist named Audrey, played by Ellie Fanning, which also introduces a connection to the alien universe. This crossover element adds a new layer to the story and expands the overall scope of the franchise. This direction was a bold creative choice by the director, who did not want to simply repeat the same formula as earlier Predator films. In interviews, he mentioned that he was inspired by Terminator 2, Judgment Day. He wanted to create something that was exciting and visually strong, but also emotional and accessible to a wider audience. The goal was to make a film that could appeal to both longtime fans and new viewers, combining action with deeper storytelling rather than relying only on familiar elements from previous movies. We are currently seeing strong momentum around Cyber Monday promotions, with the major discounts being highlighted across different platforms. At the same time, the Predator franchise has been gaining renewed attention, especially after the success of Prey, 2022, which returned to a more grounded style, and this year's well-received animated anthology Killer of Killers. Continuing that momentum, Predator Badlands has made a notable impact. The film has crossed a strong global total after adding around $7.20 million during its recent run. With this performance, Badlands has become one of the highest-grossing entries in the franchise's 38-year history, even surpassing the previously leading Alien vs. Predator, 2004. However, this achievement comes with some context. The comparison is based on direct box office numbers without adjusting for inflation or currency differences. For example, earlier entries like Prey had a different release strategy. Willy Alien vs. Predator benefited from stronger DVD-era revenue, making it one of 20th Century Fox's most profitable titles at the time. Predator, Badlands has earned around $85 million domestically and continues to outperform internationally, with key markets including China, the United Kingdom, and Mexico contributing significantly to its total. The franchise itself began in 1987 with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and over time it has seen both theatrical releases and streaming experiments. One of the biggest strengths of Badlands is its fresh perspective. Unlike earlier films, this story places the predator in a central role, not just as a hunter, but as a character audiences can follow. The film introduces a new narrative angle where the predator is no longer just the threat, but part of the emotional core of the story. The character is supported by an android companion played by Elle Fanning, which also connects the story to the Alien universe. This crossover element adds depth and expands the larger sci-fi world the franchise exists in. Despite its success, the film came with a high production cost of around $105 million, which makes profitability more complex. Still, its performance shows that sometimes a franchise simply needs a new direction to regain audience interest. The decision to shift the predator from a villain to protagonist, along with the subtle connections to the Alien universe, has helped Badlands stand out. It has also delivered strong critical and audience reception, earning one of the highest approval ratings in the franchise's history. With high audience scores and positive word of mouth, the film has proven that viewers are open to seeing familiar characters in new ways. Overall, Predator, Badlands demonstrates how a bold creative shift can successfully revive a long-running franchise and set the stage for future stories. So far, Badlands has earned over $135 million at the box office, including more than $60 million from domestic theaters. With a production budget of around $105 million, it has already become one of the highest-grossing films in the franchise within just 10 days of release. While it still has a long way to go compared to massive sci-fi hits that cross $350 million, its strong momentum could continue to pull more audiences into theaters in the coming weeks. The film now needs just over $20 million to surpass the Predator's $159 million the worldwide total. As for where the franchise goes next, nothing is officially confirmed yet, but it is clear that there are ideas in development. With an Alien sequel already in progress and related projects moving forward, it seems likely that the creators will get the chance to continue expanding the universe. One of the biggest questions fans are asking is whether we will see an full crossover between the Predator and Alien franchises. Despite mixed reactions to past attempts, it now feels more possibly than ever. Predator, Badlands has performed strongly for Disney and 20th Century Studios, especially with its opening weekend numbers. It delivered one of the best starts in the franchise, surpassing expectations and outperforming previous entries, including the 2018 film. Before release, the movie was projected to open around $60 million. But it managed to go beyond that estimate. The PG-13 rating also helped the film reach a wider audience, allowing more viewers to experience it compared to earlier, more restricted entries. While still filled with action, the film balances its intense moments with a broader appeal. Instead of repeating the exact formula of earlier films, Badlands takes a different approach. It keeps the spirit and core identity of the franchise while introducing a new tone. The movie leans into a sci-fi action-adventure style with elements of character-driven storytelling and touches of lighter moments. At the same time, it builds subtly connections to the Alien universe, with Elle Fanning's android character playing a key role in that link. This fresh direction shows that the franchise can evolve without relying too heavily on past formulas. Despite the shift in tone and perspective, Badlands is clearly connecting with audiences. It proves that giving a long-running franchise a new creative direction can lead to renewed success. For fans who still want more, the film's performance could open the door for bigger and more ambitious projects in the future. At this point, many would even welcome a properly developed Alien vs. Predator or a crossover set on a dangerous and fully realized alien world. Predator, Badlands stands out as a strong sci-fi action film with memorable characters, intense creatures, and a solid narrative. It may not get the recognition of some major blockbuster titles, but Ida delivers a unique and engaging experience. It remains a standout entry in the Predator franchise, combining familiar elements like advanced hunting gear and survival themes with a story that works on its own. Most importantly, it explores deeper ideas about identity and purpose, raising the question of what it truly means to be human. Even in a story where humans are almost absent, none of this will come as a surprise to those who have been following the recent developments in the franchise. This entry, along with its two predecessors, the Native American sci-fi based Prey and the animated anthology Predator, Killer of Killers, has been directed by Dan Trachtenberg. His approach to the Predator formula brings a sense of originality, placing familiar elements into new situations. While these films share a common foundation, each one is structurally, visually, and tonally distinct. Rather than feeling like traditional sequels, they come across as separate interpretations of the same universe, each exploring a different style while still maintaining the core identity of the franchise. The creative influence behind these films draws from a wide range of inspirations, including classic zombie cinema, Hong Kong action storytelling, and thriller elements. This mix gives the franchise a fresh energy while still respecting its roots. Badlands stands out as the first Predator film to place a predator at the center of the story. The narrative begins on the Predator home world, where the species, known as the Aja, live in a highly aggressive and hierarchical society. Strength is everything and any sign of weakness is rejected. The main character, Dex, is a young predator who wants to prove himself and be accepted as a warrior. However, he is looked down upon because of his smaller size and perceived lack of strength. After narrowly surviving an attack from his own father, who leads the tribe, Dex escapes to a dangerous planet known as Gamma. His goal is to hunt and defeat a seemingly unstoppable creature that has defeated every challenger before him. By doing so, he hopes to claim its head and return home to prove his worth. The early part of Predator, Badlands plays out as a survival story. Dex must learn how to navigate an unfamiliar and hostile environment, understanding the planet's terrain, creatures, and dangers in order to survive. It feels similar to survival-focused stories like Castaway, but reimagined in a sci-fi setting. While the idea of an outcast seeking a redemption is a familiar concept, the setting of Gamma gives it a fresh edge. The planet itself feels alive and dangerous, with every element working against Dex as he struggles to survive and move closer to his mission. The connection between the Predator and Alien universes is also present here. Originally linked through comics and earlier crossover films under 20th Century Fox, now part of Disney, this film explores that relationship in a more integrated way. The story introduces a powerful creature known as the Kalak, a highly dangerous and almost unstoppable being. Its design and presence add a new level of threat, expanding the scope of the universe and raising the stakes for Dex's journey. Fanning's character is first introduced in a way that feels both tragic and quietly engaging, with a curious and persistent nature that contrasts with the harsh environment around her. Many planetary exploration films tend to focus only on large, dangerous predators, but this story takes a broader approach. While it does include powerful and threatening creatures, it also gives us attention to smaller life forms, including herbivores, insects, and plant-based ecosystems. The film builds its world in a detailed way, showing that all life on the planet is interconnected and aware of one another. This sense of a living, reactive environment adds depth to the story. As expected in a Predator film, weapons play an important role. Dex has his own unique tools and uses them effectively, but there are moments where he is forced to survive without them, relying instead on his surroundings and instincts to stay alive. Themes of family and identity run throughout the story, though they are handled in a subtle way rather than being overly emphasized. Ideas of brotherhood, sisterhood, and parental influence are present, but they act more as underlying elements than direct messages. The dynamic between the characters reveals different interpretations of these relationships. There are clear contrasts in personality, especially when it comes to trust, emotion, and loyalty. The character Asa, for example, A represents a more controlled and a detached perspective. She operates with logic and is tied closely to the system that created her, even though that same system has caused her damage. At the same time, there is another layer of emotional conflict where human-like behavior begins to emerge even in characters who are not fully human. This creates tension between instinct, programming, and personal growth. The presence of a companion creature adds another dimension to the story, mirroring Dex's own journey. It behaves in a curious and almost childlike way, reflecting themes of learning and adaptation. One of the film's strengths is that Ida does not simply introduce concepts like family, survival, or weakness and leave them as surface ideas. Instead, these themes are explored through character interactions and action sequences. Conversations between characters like Tia and Dex, along with the situations that they face, show how these ideas can be used for both cooperation and conflict. As the story progresses, both characters will begin to change. Tia starts to understand relationships in a way, while Dex begins to question his own beliefs about strength and independence. Moments of dialogue highlight these shift, especially when survival is no longer just about staying alive, but about choosing how to live. The film also challenges traditional ideas of strength. It introduces the concept of leadership not as dominance, but as responsibility. True strength, as suggested in Thea's story, comes from protecting others rather than controlling them. This idea connects back to earlier themes in the franchise, where survival and power are often tested. Here, however, those ideas are given a more thoughtful interpretation, adding a depth to both the characters and the overall narrative. There is much more to the story, but Ida is better not to go into every detail because part of the experience is discovering where it leads. The film works best when it surprises you, allowing the visuals and dialogue to guide the journey without revealing everything in advance. At its core, Predator, Badlands becomes an inspirational adventure about different beings overcoming the limits placed on them, whether those limits come from their nature, their programming, or the expectations of others. It suggests that there is always more to someone than what others assume. The message feels universal. Sometimes the things we chase the most are not what truly matter, and realizing that it can set us free. My own experience with the Predator franchise started on a mixed note. I am not referring to a specific new film, but rather the overall identity of the series, which at times felt unclear or inconsistent. Moving forward to 2025, I was not especially excited for Badlands at first. However, after a slow period at the box office, any solid release felt welcome, which may have influenced how much I ended up enjoying it. The story follows Dex, a young predator living on his home world, who is desperate to prove himself. He wants to earn the approval of his father and gain recognition as a true warrior. After failing to meet expectations and facing rejection, he escapes to the dangerous planet Ghana, where he sets his sights on defeating a powerful creature known as the Calic. Survival on Ghana is not easy, and Dex struggles in the harsh environment. His journey changes when he encounters Tia, a synthetic human who was part of a mission sent to capture the Calic for a powerful corporation. She is the only survivor, left damaged and incomplete after the mission failed. The two form an uneasy alliance. What begins as a practical partnership slowly develops into something closer to a friendship as they face challenges together. This is complicated by the fact that Tia is a machine learning to process emotion, while Dex comes from a culture that rejects it entirely. This dynamic raises an interesting conflict. The story explores what it means to feel, to connect, and to evolve beyond one's original purpose. While these themes are central, they might not work equally for everyone. Some moments that aim for emotional depth can feel a bit forced depending on the viewer's perspective. On a simpler level, the film works well as an action experience. The interactions between the characters, especially Tia's humor and Dex's reactions, add a layer of entertainment. Another advantage of using non-humanic characters is that the film can present intense action and violence while still maintaining a border rating, since most of the damage is shown through mechanical or alien forms. As an action film, Predator, Badlands delivers a decent and engaging experience, Even if it does not aim to be something much deeper, it is enjoyable for what it is. A straightforward sci-fi action story with some emotional elements. Interestingly, this viewing also reminded me of an older film from 1987 that featured Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura, where their characters had directly faced off in a memorably confrontation. It highlights how far the franchise has evolved since then. Predator, Badlands carries a rating for a strong sequences of sci-fi violence and runs at a standard feature length. It fits into the category of films that may not be perfect, but still offer a satisfying and creative experience. The concept itself is compelling, placing one of the universe's most dangerous hunters on a planet designed to be even more deadly, and watching him adapt and survive. The story continues to follow Dex as he faces rejection from his own kind, loses his brother, and is forced to find his own path on a hostile world. Along the way, he encounters new allies and enemies, including advanced synthetic beings, which further expanded the scope of the story and its themes. Tessa is introduced as the identical counterpart of Tia, also played by Ellie Fanning. Unlike Tia, she is more driven by her mission and is willing to take extreme steps, including targeting Dex, in order to achieve her objective of reconnecting with her original body. Predator, Badlands carries a surprising sense of humor, with moments that feel light and quirky in tone. Tia's personality adds a unique layer, as she constantly comments on Dex, the environment, and the strange creatures they encounter. Throughout their journey, the two come across a variety of unusual and often dangerous life forms, and nearly everything on the planet seems intent on killing Dex. At one point, even something as simply as picking up what looks like food turns into a threat, showing how unpredictably and hostile the planet truly is. The environment itself becomes an active challenge, constantly forcing the characters to adapt and survive. This film feels very different from the original Predator. Instead of focusing purely on suspense and horror, it leans more into adventure and character-driven storytelling, similar in tone to monster-based franchises like King Kong or Godzilla. The action sequences still carry intensity, but they are presented in a way that feels more stylized and less grounded in traditional survival horror. There is also a shift in how the Predator is portrayed. Rather than being just a fearsome hunter, the story presents him more as an underdog, a character who is misunderstood and trying to prove his worth. This approach may not work for everyone, but it adds a different perspective to the franchise. Despite some of its sillier or more exaggerated moments, the film remains entertaining. The dynamic between Dex and his growing group, along with the creative ways the planet challenges them, keeps the story engaging. While it may not rely heavily on deeper subtext, it still delivers a clear central theme about identity and growth. The film also fits within the broader shared universe that connects Predator and Alien. It suggests that the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is aware of the Predator species, continuing the idea of a connected sci-fi world. After Disney's acquisition of 20th Century Fox, there has been a noticeable shift in how the franchise is presented. The tone has moved slightly away from a pure horror and toward a more accessible style, similar to large-scale adventure franchises. This includes reducing explicit elements while still maintaining action through stylized visuals. Badlands continues this direction, using CGI-heavy sequences and focusing more on character relationships. Instead of humans being hunted, the story centers on a sympathetic Predator navigating a dangerous world. Dex, the young Predator, is sent to the hostile planet Kana to hunt a legendary creature known as the Calic. Along the way, he forms alliances, including with Tia, and encounters other creatures that add both danger and unexpected support to his journey. Rather than focusing entirely on fear and violence, the film explores a connection and partnership. The relationship between Tia and Dex follows a classic contrast. One is talkative and curious, while the other is quiet and focused. In several moments, Tia challenges Dex's beliefs, especially the idea that a strength comes from isolation. She suggests that true leadership is about protecting others, not standing alone. This gives the film a more emotional and even wholesome tone than expected. Compared to earlier Predator films, Badlands feels closer to a large-scale adventure story, blending action with the themes of growth and companionship. Another major property that came under Disney after the Fox merger carries similar themes, especially the idea of what someone is willing to sacrifice for a family, whether biological or chosen. It also explores environmental respect, rewarding characters who learn to understand and live in harmony with nature, similar to what is seen in Avatar. In Badlands, these themes are present but not deeply explored. The villains remain fairly simple and exaggerated, lacking strong complexity. While Avatar takes time to explore emotions like grief and loss, Badlands moves quickly toward action and spectacle. There are large-scale sequences, including intense chases and visually driven fights that focus more on excitement than emotional depth. The film heavily relies on impressive CGI. The creature design is detailed and expressive, and the planet itself feels alive. Ghana is presented as a dangerous ecosystem where every creature is part of a chain of survival, constantly hunting or being hunted. In many scenes, something is always attacking something else in the background, adding to the sense of danger. Some of the creatures even resemble designs from the Alien universe, reinforcing the connection between the two franchises. However, much of the destruction shown in the film feels more focused on visual impact than realism, emphasizing style over function. Despite its strengths, Badlands has a noticeably different tone compared to earlier Predator films. It feels more like a Disney-influenced adaptation where horror elements are softened in favor of a more accessible approach. Instead of focusing on humans being hunted, the film centers on a sympathetic predator character. Dex, a young predator, is sent to the hostile planet Ghana to prove himself by defeating a powerful creature known as the Calic. Soon after arriving, he forms an alliance with Tia, a synthetic character connected to a larger corporate force. He also encounters other creatures along the way, including smaller companions that add both charm and support to his journey. Rather than focusing entirely on fear and violence, the film leans into relationships and character dynamics. The interaction between Tia and Dex follows a familiar contrast. One is expressive and talkative, while the other is quiet and disciplined. In several moments, Tia challenges Dex's beliefs, especially the idea that a true hunter must own a message. Beneath all the sci-fi action and creature chaos, it's really a story about connection and belonging. Dex and Tia slowly begin to understand each other, forming a bond that mirrors a broken sibling relationship. Dex is driven by the loss of his brother, pushing himself to complete the hunt and prove his worth. In contrast, Tia represents a different path. While she once showed signs of care, she ultimately chooses logic and control over emotion, abandoning any connection as she once had. This creates a strong contrast between our characters, some choosing empathy, others rejecting it completely. Both Dex and Tia are shaped by loss. Each of them has experienced the destruction of someone close to them, and that trauma drives their actions. Even smaller characters, like the younger creature revealed later, reflect these theme. Separated from family and forced to survive in a harsh world. Why these point? The three orphans have formed their own kind of family, and that bond makes them stronger, smarter, and far more dangerous than before. Predator, Badlands carries a surprisingly heartfelt message underneath all the chaos, highlighting how connection and loyalty can exist even in the harshest worlds. Watching a predator, a robot, and an alien share something close to humanity is quietly powerful, especially given how straightforward the story is. Like many fans, I grew up loving the original Predator. After that, the franchise had its ups and downs with films like Alien vs. Predator and The Predator. Some fun, some forgettable. But everything changed with Prey. That film didn't just refresh the series, it made it exciting again. It proved that the concept could still feel new. Now, Predator, Badlands takes that momentum and runs with it. It might actually be the most entertaining entry in the franchise so far. It's fast, clever, funny at times, and unexpectedly emotional. For the first time in decades, the film does something bold. It makes you root for the Predator. And that's the real magic here. Instead of being the unstoppably monster, the Predator becomes the underdog. This time, he's not the hunter. He's the one struggling to survive. We follow Dex, a young Yaj living in his home world, where weakness is not tolerated. His own father sees him as a failure and even orders his death. His brother refuses to carry out that command and pays for it with his life. That moment pushes Dex to escape to the deadly planet Ghana, determined to prove himself by hunting down the most dangerous creature there and bringing back its head. But Ghana is far more dangerous than he expected. To survive, Dex teams up with a damaged synthetic named Tia, who agrees to guide him through the planet in exchange for help recovering her lost body parts. Along the way, they form an unlikely partnership and even befriend a strange native creature they nickname Bud. Always stand alone. She introduces the concept that real strength comes from protecting others, not isolating oneself. This creates a surprisingly emotional tone for a franchise that originally focused on intense and brutal action. Compared to earlier films, Badlands feels closer to a large-scale adventure, blending action with themes of connection and growth. The film also continues the shared universe concept, strengthening ties between Predator and Alien. While the themes may not be deeply complex, they still provide a foundation for future storytelling. By the end of the film, the story sets up possibilities for what comes next. The characters are left in positions that allow for expansion, with new relationships forming and future threats hinted at. Dex's journey, along with Tia's evolving role, opens the door for further development in upcoming stories. Their alliance challenges traditional Predator culture and creates opportunities for new directions in the franchise. The final shot of the film hints at a new threat, possibly setting up a future antagonist for the next installment. At the same time, the film introduces a small but memorable companion in the form of Bird, a cute yet surprisingly dangerous creature that ends up with a fairly high body count by the end. Dex's journey ultimately leaves the door wide open for his character to return, and the same goes for Tia and Bird, who have strong potential to become recurring heroes in the franchise. Traditionally, the Predator films have focused more on humans being hunted, leaving Yaji culture mostly unexplored. This film changes that by shifting the spotlight onto the predators themselves, giving the story a fresh perspective. It expands the world in a meaningful way, especially compared to earlier entries like Killer of Killers, which have focused more on arenas and captured warriors. Badlands, on the other hand, is more centered on a single personal journey. The Yaji society is shown as harsh and unforgiving, where emotions like pitch and grief are seen as weaknesses that must be eliminated. It's a brutal system, and Dex's struggle becomes interesting because he begins to question and resist parts of that culture while still trying to honor it. His journey ties deeply into themes of family, loss, and identity, especially as he carries the memory of his brother and tries to live up to his legacy. One of the strongest aspects of the ending is how it sets up future possibilities, not just for the Predator franchise, but potentially for connections with the Alien universe also. The arrival of a mysterious ship at the end hints at a larger threat, possibly even involving Dex's mother. This opens up the idea that future stories could explore deeper conflicts, including the possibility of predators being captured or challenged by alien forces. The film also firmly establishes that both universes exist together. With the presence of advanced technology and android characters, it becomes clearer that crossovers are more possible than ever. The dangerous ecosystem of the planet could easily tie into future alien-related stories, especially with its hostile creatures and unpredictable environment. At its core, Badlands carries a simply but not. However, the real danger comes later, when the Wayland Yutani forces arrive, led by Tia's sister, Tessa. What starts as a survival mission quickly turns into something much bigger. There are a few twists along the way, but at its core, Badlands feels like a wild sci-fi buddy adventure. You've got a predator learning to trust, a half-broken android trying to survive, and a small but deadly creature that somehow steals the show. And somehow, it works. The film manages to take a creature that has been killing humans for nearly 48 years and turn him into someone you actually care about. Elle Fanning is easily the glue that holds everything together. She brings humor, intelligence, and some seriously impressive action moments, especially in scenes involving her damaged legs. But what really lifts Predator, Badlands beyond just action and comedy is how imaginative the world feels. The planet itself feels alive. Every corner of it is filled with a strange, dangerous life, deadly plants, unpredictable creatures, and bizarre environments that constantly keep you on edge. It has that same sense of wonder as a Jurassic World, but with far more creativity. From alien wildlife to weird details like strange beings in glass-like terrain, everything adds to the experience. It's chaotic, creative, and genuinely fun to watch. Turning the Predator into an underdog was a bold move, but it pays off. It allows the audience to connect with the character in a completely new way. The writing supports this well, the visuals are strong, and the performances, even from the non-human characters, carry real emotion. Honestly, it's one of the most entertaining theater experiences in a long time. Since taking over the franchise, the director has clearly been experimenting instead of repeating the same formula. First, he went back in time with Prey, then explored different styles with A Killer of Killers. Now, he pushes things even further by taking the story into space and flipping the concept entirely, making the Predator the hero. That idea alone is risky, but it works. The film even commits to telling parts of the story in an alien language with the subtitles, which makes the world feel more authentic instead of watered down. We're introduced to Dex early on, a young predator who may look intimidating but is seen as weak by his own kind. After being rejected, he's thrown into an even more dangerous world where literally everything is trying to kill him. The setup feels like an old-school sci-fi adventure. Simple goal, dangerous journey. His mission is clear: hunt down the most powerful creature on the planet, the unstoppable apex predator. But nothing is easy. Even the environment itself is deadly, filled with toxic plants and hidden threats. Things get more interesting when he teams up with Tia, a half-destroyed android missing her legs. It's an unusual partnership, almost like he is something straight out of a classic sci-fi story. Together, they navigate a world where survival itself is a challenge. Of course, not everyone will like these a new direction. Some longtime fans might feel the Predator has been softened too much compared to the unstoppable killer from earlier films. But at the same time, it's clear the film is made with love for the franchise. There are still powerful, iconic moments, like weapon scenes that will remind fans of Aliens, and they hit hard. Elle Fanning also gets standout action sequences, especially with the way her character adapts despite her limitations. These moments add creativity and tension instead of just relying on brute force. In many ways, the film feels similar to a Guardians of the Galaxy, a group of misfits on a dangerous journey learning to trust each other. Visually and tonally, it also leans a bit toward big sci-fi worlds like Avatar, especially during large-scale battles. That said, the film isn't perfect. Some of the heavy CGI moments can feel a bit overwhelming, especially when huge creatures take over the screen. But even then, the characters are strong enough to keep things engaging. At the end of the day, what really works is the chemistry between these unlikely heroes. They make the journey fun, emotional, and surprisingly memorable. They learn to work together and adapt to their environment, while still building a kill count higher than anything seen before in the franchise. The Predator feels even more dangerous here, especially with the detail that their blood is white instead of red, which helps maintain the intensity while keeping the film within its runtime and rating limits. Predator, Badlands is a full-on popcorn movie, a mix of sci-fi, action, and a bit of geeky humor. It fully embraces its wild ideas and sometimes even feels like it's enjoying itself a little too much. But if you've ever wanted to see a high-energy action sequences with the creative weapons and over-the-top moments, this film delivers. When the Walt Disney Company acquired a 21st Century Fox in 2019, most fans focused on Marvel, but the deal also gave Disney control over franchises like Predator. With this film, you can feel that shift. Instead of focusing purely on horror and brutality, Badlands leans into a more adventure-driven tone, almost like a sci-fi journey similar to Star Wars, even adding a small, cute companion element. The director continues to experiment instead of repeating the same formula. After projects like Prey and Killer of Killers, this film keeps things fresh. It avoids heavy gore, using stylized effects like neon-colored blood and a creature-based action, while still delivering plenty of CGI-driven sequences. The biggest change is how the story flips the traditional concept. Instead of humans being hunted, the predator becomes the central character, an outcast seen as weak. To prove himself, he travels to a deadly planet filled with danger, aiming to kill a legendary creature. Once there, he teams up with a damaged android, Tia, and also encounters a strange monkey-like creature that adds both humor and charm. The film focuses more on relationships rather than just violence. There's even a light comedic tone in their interactions. Tia mimics Dex in a slightly annoying, but funny way, while also trying to teach him that a true hunter isn't someone who stands alone, but someone who protects others. It's a surprisingly soft message for a franchise that started with a ruthless alien hunter killing soldiers. Because of this, Badlands often feels less like a traditional Predator film and more like something closer to an Avatar, with themes of nature, survival, and connection. The themes aren't very deep, and the villains feel a bit basic, but the film still explores ideas of family, belonging, and environmental balance. Some scenes, like action involving a detached robotic limbs, can feel a bit cheesy, but the overall visual experience is strong, with impressive CGI creatures and environments. At times, the spectacle feels more for entertainment than emotional impact, but it still reminds you of the dangerous world the story takes place in, even if it's presented in a more family-friendly way compared to older entries in the franchise. Predator is the perfect 80s action movie, full of explosive set pieces, practical effects, and iconic one-liners that still hit even today. It's one of those films that remains endlessly entertaining. If I ever came across it on TV, I'd drop everything and watch it again, probably even calling my brother while it's playing. After that came a series of follow-ups, including crossover attempts with the Alien vs. Predator universe. Some of them didn't quite land, but a few still managed to surprise me. They didn't capture the magic of the original, but they were entertaining enough and reminded us why we liked the Predator concept in the first place. One of the biggest strengths of Predator, Badlands, is simply returning into that world again. There's a thrill in watching a predator navigate such a dangerous environment, and the movie keeps things moving at a steady pace. Unlike some earlier entries, it doesn't get stuck in long exposition. It keeps pushing forward with constant challenges and close encounters that hold your attention. The film also explores the culture of the in more depth, showing that they are far more than just mindless hunters. There's a particular scene focusing on other rituals that feels genuinely dark and intense. It presents them as part of a structured and violent society, which adds a fresh perspective, especially since this time the Predator is more of a protagonist than an antagonist. Surprisingly, the film even makes the non-human characters likable. Casting Elle Fanning was a smart decision. Her character brings humor and emotional depth, helping the audience connect with the story while still keeping the attention alive. Her interactions with the Predator and others add balance without weakening the tone. The action sequences are strong, well-paced, and carefully executed. While older films focused on humans adapting to survive the Predator, these one flips the idea. The Predator himself is learning, adapting, and evolving. It keeps the core formula intact, but presents it in a fresh way. The fights are intense, the chase scenes are engaging, and the mix of practical and CGI effects works well. The movie does a good job of maintaining energy and keeping viewers invested. That said, there are a few moments where the pacing slows down a bit too much. These quieter scenes aren't bad. They help with character development, but sometimes they slightly interrupt the flow and make you want things to move faster again. There are also a few attempts at humor that don't fully land. The intention is clear, to balance action and tension with lighter moments, but some of these scenes feel slightly out of place compared to the darker tone of the story. They don't ruin the experience, but AEO can feel a bit off. Predator, Badlands takes the franchise in a new direction and, interestingly, it's rated PG-13, the first time since Alien vs. Predator in 2004. That said, the film still includes plenty of action, violence, and intense moments, with fights, kills, and brutal encounters throughout. The reason the film gets a PG-13 rating is because none of the violence involves humans. In fact, there are no human characters in the movie at all. Everything being killed is either an alien or a synthetic robot. So, there's no traditional blood, or at least no red blood anywhere. There's also no strong language in the film. However, parents should still be aware that the story carries a darker, more intense tone. After all, it's still a predator movie, which means there are hunters constantly seeking to kill for sport. When it comes to language or sexual content, both are minimal to non-existent. Predator, Badlands is an entertaining addition to the franchise. It delivers plenty of action while also expanding on nostalgia culture and introducing new characters that help balance the violence with humor and emotional moments. Seeing the Predator as the protagonist is a fresh take, and the visual effects and set pieces make the movie worth watching. That said, it's not perfect. Some pacing issues and a few awkward attempts at humor prevent it from reaching the same level of balance and cohesion as the original Predator. While it doesn't match that film's legacy, it still comfortably stands above many of the weaker sequels that came before it. For fans of the franchise, or any looking for an action-packed and suspenseful ride, it's definitely worth checking out. Following projects like Prey and Predator, Killer of Killers, this film feels like a smaller, more focused entry. It follows a younger predator who is exiled from his clan and sent to the deadliest planet in the galaxy to prove his worth. The setup is familiar, but that's exactly why it works, especially with the shift in perspective the film is trying to achieve. Building mythology this deep into a long-running franchise is not easy. Deciding where to shift focus can be tricky, but the film handles it in a smart and simple way. The story is structured clearly, with well-planned sequences and strong visual direction. The camera placement and action staging make the most out of a straightforward premise. Badlands is another example of the director doing the small things right. Little details, like the reason behind a missing thing and what it represents, area introduced early and later become important to the story. It's simple, but effective storytelling. Most importantly, the film carries an emotional core. That's what made Prey and Killer of Killers stand out, and it continues here. The characters all have clear motivations and emotional reasons to fight and survive. The other major part of the story is the synthetic character from Thea Wayland Utini's side. She's designed with a specific purpose, but ends up learning just as much from Dex as he does from her. She has a built-in sense of empathy that takes her on her own emotional journey. Her character brings a softer, more human-like quality that hasn't really been explored much in previous Predator-era films. By the end, she delivers some of the most memorable action moments in the movie, and Elle Fanning performs really well. There's even a moment in the final act that truly feels like classic Predator-era energy. The kind that makes you stop and think, yes, this is what this franchise is all about. Granted, it may feel a little uneven at times, but it's definitely there. The action is a mix of clever use of the environment and straight-up brutal combat. Some of the fights are raw and heavy, which is exactly how I would describe the best action across the Predator-era franchise. Even though the movie is set on a distant alien planet, that's really the only reason it manages to stay PG-13. This is actually the first Predator film with that rating, but it still goes pretty hard. The main difference is that all the violence involves aliens, so instead of human blood, it's alien fluids everywhere. If this same level of brutality involved humans, like in Prey or Killer of Killers, it would easily push into R-rated territory. From a visual standpoint, the creature design is solid. The alien planet is filled with a dangerous flora and fauna. While these creatures may not reach the level of something like Avatar, they're still creative and engaging. There's something satisfying about watching Dex encounter these threats. Quickly learn their weaknesses, and then take them down, often in the same way they try to attack him. Everything shown in the trailers is just a glimpse. None of those creatures go down easily. Each encounter feels like a real challenge. There's also a bit of that classic cute creature element added into the story. It actually serves a purpose and helps move the narrative forward rather than just being there to sell merchandise or create a mascot. Still, it feels a bit unusual in a Predator film, almost like an idea borrowed from another genre. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. Dax himself is an earnest character. At one point, he even tries to make a joke, and while that moment doesn't fully land, it shows something different about him. Instead of the usual cold, machine-like characters like the Terminator, he feels more like someone learning and evolving. Even when the humor doesn't completely work, you can still appreciate the effort behind it. And once the film opens the door to giving the Outjet their own language, it allows the characters to express themselves more clearly, making the feel more real and defined. In the end, Predator, Badlands might not be perfect, but it does something important. It takes a familiar franchise and gives it a fresh perspective. By turning the Predator into a character you can actually understand and even root for, the film adds a new layer to a story we've seen for decades. It delivers strong action, creative world building, and just enough emotion to make the journey feel meaningful. Not every idea works, and some moments feel uneven, but the overall experience is still engaging and entertaining. More than anything, it proves that this franchise still has room to grow. Whether you're a longtime fan or just looking for a fun sci-fi ride, Badlands shows that there's still life and evolution left in the Predator universe.